Welcome everyone to our very first 30-minute next webinar. We have just spoken previously that it doesn't make sense to have like a 60-minute webinar discussion because we are all quite busy nowadays. So we will try to keep it short, simple, and proactive. During today's webinar, which is, by the way, a very, very interesting team, nominated by our colleague John, which I like very much, especially since I'm a big Pixar fan and a movie fan, you two small kids. And today's webinar is having an interesting title, like I said, Finding Our NEMO, or Next Evolution Medical Omnichannel. Today we have 4 extraordinary panelists. So starting with Michelle first, our very good friend Michelle. First question, the toughest one, how are you doing?
Doing really well, actually. I'm coming off of 6 weeks on different conferences and really happy this is what's capping it off.
Okay, so it seems you're very, very busy, which we all know. Moving ahead with Sam Pinner from GSK. Sam, same question to you. All fine on your side?
Thanks, Dario. Yeah, very much looking forward to the call today. Great to be able to join.
Fantastic. Carlos Ed from Novartis, and we are meeting very soon in Vienna. Carlos, right? How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Really excited to be here with extraordinary people and the nice title, Finding Our NEMO. And I look forward to the discussion and also the questions from the audience. And thank you for the invitation.
Fantastic. And last but not least, the person who actually nominated this intriguing and very interesting title, John Waba from Kite or Gilad. John, same question to you. And by the way, have you found your NEMO already?
Thanks for the question, Dario. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I think we're finding our NEMO. I think we're in progress.
Okay, fantastic. Hopefully we won't find Shrek, so let's focus on NEMO, right? Okay, first things first. I mean, omnichannel medical first, extremely hyped, like we all know. It might be somehow also the perfect playground for omnichannel in medical first, due to the fact that medical sits on a huge amount of insights, data, and relevant science based on information requested by HCPs and other stakeholders, right? However, I see and hear that some MSLs really are quite hesitant when it comes to omnichannel and tech in overall. So my first question, which I would like to kick off today's discussion, is why all the hype around omnichannel and what are some clear misconceptions when we speak about omnichannel? So I think it's fair to start with John in that case.
Thanks, Dario. So I think it's a very fair question, and as you say, there's a lot of hype, and I think that hype is now starting to potentially do omnichannel a disservice when it comes to medical affairs, because I think people are maybe over-engineering and overthinking about it. For me, omnichannel is a way by means we can optimize our scientific engagement. It's a tool that we can use in order to optimize what we're already doing and you know, bring value to our healthcare professionals. And I think one of the big things that's causing some issues when it comes to medical affairs adopting omnichannel is tech. People think that tech is the solution, or using a lot of technology will mean that you do omnichannel in the right way. I think tech is an enabler. It's not the be-all and end-all of omnichannel. I think it's about looking at what are your objectives, what are your communication or engagement objectives, and actually start thinking about moving away from a one-size-fits-all that we have traditionally been doing to something that is more purposeful, more targeted, dare I say more personalized. And I think tech comes later, but it's important to have the right mindset and to also start thinking about how I'm going to be communicating a specific message to a specific stakeholder that is at the right time for them and that will add value and is relevant to them at that specific time point.
Yeah, very much set in the right direction, especially the part about tech, right? Let's continue with you, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think I fully agree with John, and I think that also that the planning that we do is, if we really sit down and are honest with ourselves, we just don't have the resource to do everything with MSLs. and our kind of classic strategy. So I think looking at it when omni-channel makes sense, or even multi. And I think the adoption, I think it gets challenged because it's viewed as cumbersome sometimes, and people don't know why we're doing it. So I think what we have to do is bring people on the journey with us. And I think that they need to see quickly the value that this brings to them, and also to our customers.
Thanks a lot. Carlos?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. So to add, John and Michelle, they raised very important things. Like Michelle touched upon a bit the time, and John spoke about, the assets, if we want to say, like the tech, the different channels. So if I want to give a holistic view, in my opinion, I look at 4 things when it comes to omni-channel. So one is the strategy or the need. So is there really a need for omni-channel for a specific disease area or product in that specific country, let's say, in that specific time? Because in many instances, and we see it everywhere, like you have a new hype, you have something, and then everyone's strategy includes those things: generative AI, omni-channel, population health. Like everyone starts jumping on these nice buzzwords and nice things and just say, okay, I want to do it. But we need to take a step back and ask the why question. Why do I need to do it? Do I need it? Do my customers need it? So that's the first part that for me is very important. What is the strategy? What is the need? Which takes me to the next point is, instead of jumping directly into what contents and channels and MSLs are the face-to-face, let's say, touch point. But of course, you have websites, you have webinars, you have conferences, you have congresses, emails. So all of these are also channels where you can share content. So the second question is, before jumping into the content, is what is the customer experience that I'm looking for? What is the journey I want to take my customer on? Because it's for the customer that I'm creating this omni-channel. And since you spoke about myth, one of the biggest myths, in my opinion, is confusing omni-channel with multi-channel. We see many times that, oh, we're going to a congress, I'm gonna share my symposium as an MSL triggered email, I'm gonna put it on our HCP portal, I'm gonna put it on the website, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Okay, that's everything that you're gonna do, which is great. But integrating those into a customer experience which is seamless, this is where omni-channel is. And we can talk about some hypothetical examples or even some real examples in the next minutes of the webinar. So the strategy and the need, the experience that we want our customers to have, the assets which the colleagues touched upon, which could include the channels, the content, the budget, the tech, these all goes into the assets that we have. And at the end, the insights and the analytics. If we don't feed back into the system insights from the customers, what is working, what is not, what are they using, what they're not using, what are they saying, and capturing those insights and analytics, then everything we did was just a waste of time and money and effort.
You made a very interesting standpoint, Carlos. I mean, long story short, in my opinion, if I may, I would say that we literally speak about the journey. And it doesn't mean if you speak about multi-channel, omni-channel, but at the end of the day, it really comes to the point that we have to personalize the journey to our customers so that they absolutely feel completed and aligned with their overall vision, right? And you really made some very nice points. Sam, last but not least, answer on that particular question.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I see, all the hype around omnichannel. I think hype around omnichannel in medical specifically, I think from my experience across different organizations, it's probably grown fastest in the commercial side of the organizations. There are learnings from that are now being applied in medical. I guess one of the misconceptions that obviously comes up quite commonly is medical can't do omnichannel, and I don't believe that's the case. I think there are some challenges around it and some compliance aspects to be very clear on and understand and work through with cross-functional teams. But yeah, that misconception is definitely something that doesn't exist in my perspective. But yeah, I think ultimately the game hasn't changed. We still need to communicate with healthcare professionals across medical teams, and the world's moved on. Maybe 15 years ago, we were in the field talking to healthcare professionals face to face and might have had paper documents, but the expectations of customers have changed now. They would expect emails, they would expect messages through different platforms, and they would certainly expect to be able to access information across different channels, different websites, online sort of webinars as well. So customers' expectations have moved on, and I think that the objective we've got, communicating with healthcare professionals and imparting scientific information, hasn't. So it's just an evolution of everything that we've had previously.
But also the competition for the information is radical nowadays, right? Because we are competing for the same ATP with the same channels and almost the same messages, right? In meantime, we received a very interesting question from the audience, which sounds very basic. Adele from UCB, I mean, I believe she is fine that I can introduce her. And the question is, how is omnichannel being defined? Not sure everyone means the same listening to this discussion. Maybe just to build on that, from my own experience, when you really speak with different pharma peers, sometimes you hear the definition about omnichannel, which literally was the definition for multi-channel. So we are maybe, some of us are still maybe using the same phrases, the same definition for multi-channel nowadays for omnichannel. Who would like to comment on that?
I'm happy to comment on that one. I would put it succinctly as omnichannel is a orchestrated, data-driven approach to customer experience, and within that, it's done intentionally. It's orchestrated and it's very much data-driven, back from the engagement data, the insights that we've got from a particular healthcare professional. Yeah, so that's my succinct definition.
Yeah, and I'd add to that what I was saying earlier about when you're planning your strategy, that's when you need to start thinking about it, because you don't need to launch everything. But if you do it well, as Sam said, then you are building something purposefully and it will actually be engaged. And then you start getting the data quickly to make better decisions. So I think that I would add to that.
Anyone else? Carlos, John?
I think I completely agree with what's already been said. And I think it's a really important point to make sure that that definition of omnichannel is aligned throughout the organization. So medical doesn't have a definition of omnichannel that is different to commercial, that is different to PA or government affairs. So we should all be on the same, we should all be aligned into the purpose and the strategy that we're putting around customer experience. I'm not going to say omnichannel, but customer experience. And then each one of those functions is then inputting appropriately to make sure that there is one seamless journey overall for that healthcare professional.
That's a good point, especially when you hear many times that commercial is having another omnichannel strategy, medical affairs completely different one, but at the end of the day, the ATP is having the same persona level. So it can't be different, like you, John, said. I think that's absolutely very, very important to mention. Carlos, anything else to add?
I think the colleagues mentioned everything perfectly well.
Fantastic. Next question. We all know omnichannel isn't a new thing, and that approach will be disrupted by generative AI, as we all know. So my next question would be, what are some concrete examples of how we can implement omnichannel in medical affairs, maybe powered by generative AI, and what does and what doesn't work in that particular segment? I think that this is certainly one of the hottest topics nowadays. Maybe we can start with you, Carlos.
Yeah, so okay, let's think blue skies. If really we want this, we want to take this customer on a journey. And the reason I say blue skies is that we are all aware that what works outside pharma does not necessarily work in pharma. At the end of the day, we're not, you know, a pure, let's say, we're not marketing things that, you know, people use every day. And then if you give a bit of wrong information, that's fine, you can still manage. Or we're talking about life-saving medications, we're talking about safety concerns, we're talking about things that are very critical, and you need to be always 100% accurate in your information, not even 99%. You need to be 100% because we have a duty towards patients and towards healthcare professionals. So this is why when it comes maybe to generative AI, it's not that we're lagging behind, but we're making sure that all the guardrails are in place so that we are always protecting the patients. And we're always thinking of the patient first and the safety of our medications and the correctness of the information that goes out to patients and to healthcare providers. So I just wanted to make that clear. But then if we're thinking blue skies, it's really about the experience. Think about any experience that you want when you want to purchase anything or you want information on anything. So let's say I'm sitting here on my laptop. I do a search on a certain disease or a certain product I want to know information on. So I do get some information maybe from an HCP portal or a website, but then maybe you can click where you can get more information, or you would like to discuss additionally the safety of that medication. And this pings the MSL responsible for that territory with that request, that there is that HCP in that hospital requesting that. So the HCP, let's say, receives an email like, thank you for showing interest in that. Could I schedule a visit to come and see you and talk more about the safety of that drug? So then the MSL schedules that visit, he gathers the insights that he puts on the CRM, and those insights are then shared, let's say, at the global level, which will modify the way we create the content or add into the Q&A documents that we do based on what the HCP is asking. So those are the insights. And then after that visit, the HCP receives an email of satisfaction. How did we answer your questions? Would you like to know more? Are these topics of interest to you? And then if he says that this is a topic of interest, he receives an invite to maybe an upcoming webinar where we're discussing the safety of that product, where he could go and listen to that webinar and then with a click download the slides. So you see, it's about how do I give him that seamless journey of experience, instead of saying, okay, for the safety of the drug, I'm going to give a slide deck to the MSLs, I'm going to put it on the website, I'm going to put it here, I'm going to put it there, I'm going to put it there. It's not about where you put your content and how many channels you purchase and how many tech you pay for. It's about how do you connect everything into a journey where you're providing the things that the HCP needs at that specific time, and then get the responses that you need on the other end at those specific time points, so that you could continue and optimize and personalize the journey for that HCP.
Absolutely, fully agree.
I'll stop here, or I will take another 10 minutes maybe talking about that, but maybe so I'll stop here.
Then maybe you can continue to build on that, what Carlos just mentioned.
Yeah, I think the generative AI topic's a very interesting one. Almost the opportunities that are created from a situation of having limitless resources, and we've never been in that situation before. So if you remove constraints, what else would you get? And if AI is applied to all different elements of the value chain, all the way through drug discovery, distribution, all the way through to sort of health outcomes, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities that we don't yet know that will emerge from different parts of the entire value chain. I think some of the go-tos are obvious, things like improving in-call effectiveness and maybe analyzing calls and identifying things that might have been overlooked in a call. Orchestration of field force activities and activities across different channels in the omni-channel structure as well. Obviously, content generation and review and approval. I think generative AI lends itself very well to some of those common sort of business problems. But yeah, I think the bit's most interesting for me is what we don't yet know, and what removing those resources will actually uncover to us in the industry.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Michelle?
Yeah, I think coming from the framework of a startup and small companies, which I've been in lately, I look at omni-channel and technology, even anything with NLP, because all of what we do is text-based. So there's, natural language understanding, generation. And I think there's a unique opportunity when you build these channels at one time, and you decide very purposefully what you build. And I think you think about what are the things I can't do with my human capital? And we're very limited in a startup with what we can do. And honestly, most of our teams are also shrinking. So I think you have to think about why, which was said earlier. Why are we going to go down this journey? Why are we going to use technology? And once you start doing that, then I think the technology comes natural and you say, okay, I'm willing to do this project with ChatGPT, or in like my case, we use sentiment analysis in call centers. And we were able to pivot quickly to look at the calls that we had and just get really bucketed gross insights, macro insights quickly. And for us, that was able for us to pivot and say, what do we need within our channels, the phone lines included, that we're maybe missing. So I think there's a lot of, like, when you're going to use technology, you have to look at the pain points of internal and external as well, to decide what's best for the business and your customers.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. And John?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said. I think it's also just worth remembering that generative AI, I don't think there are still things that will never be replaced completely by generative AI, and you still need that human touch and that human judgment to take the call. So I think it's a tool that can help optimize some of the work that we're doing. An example is Insights, which has already been mentioned, especially in medical affairs, where we have a rich resource of insights from patients, from healthcare professionals, from trials, from social media, from medical information, from drug safety. And I think that's a really great place where generative AI can help us distill the relevant data, cut out the noise, but you still need that human to make a judgment about what is an insight and what is actionable, what isn't. Content generation, I completely see where this could go in the future, but again, you still need someone to help actually put the content together. Generative AI can help curate the relevant content from all these sources outside, but you still need someone out there to make sure that that content is still relevant to that specific healthcare professional. So I think there is great opportunity for generative AI to sort of progress and evolve and help us in medical affairs, but always important to just make sure that you still need someone to be doing the relevant checks to ensure that that content is correct.
I have to admit, we received a lot of questions from the audience, so I will pick another one, which is quite long, so I'll try to shorten it. The question is, when does your omnichannel approach starts if you look to the asset life cycle, and how do you approach it from a pre-launch scientific communication, plus how do you bridge it later with omnichannel for commercial purposes? I think that's an interesting one. Who would like to comment on that?
Well, I would like to start because I've just had this experience where we started too late, in my opinion. And then you're piecemealing solutions together and technology, and then it's a clunky multi-channel, and that's really putting it nicely. So I think the earlier you start, pretty much the minute you start your strategy with your customer mapping and engagement, in my opinion, my experience so far, is you have to start it then. So I don't think that that's probably the earliest I would do it, is once you start doing that strategic mapping with the customer to understand them, because you need to understand them as well to be able to understand what channels you're actually going to pursue.
Maybe add to it from my experience, what I've seen is almost attempts to replicate what the commercial teams have done with omnichannel, but in a medical setting. And I don't think that totally works. I think parts of it work, parts of it don't. So very much believe of doing omnichannel for medical and not a copy of omnichannel that's been done elsewhere in the business. But I think to Michelle's point there, and to sort of specifically answer the question, it should start much earlier on. That typically doesn't. It typically is either put in at launch or very shortly after launch. But actually those insights can be gathered from omnichannel activities prior to launch. Very, very insightful, and will help other parts of the business along their journey when the time comes. So yeah, probably not happening as early as it should do, but there's certainly opportunities that are coming out of the medical omnichannel space.
Anyone else? Carlos, John?
Yeah, I want to take just a moment to re-emphasize something. When we're talking about generative AI and omnichannel, these are strategies and tools that will empower, that will enable and optimize our channels, not replace them. because there are also a lot of people who say, is omnichannel and generative AI going to replace MSLs in the future, or replace sales reps, or replace? And I think John mentioned that, and then also Michelle, that it's not about replacing, it's about optimizing, making the time shorter to generate or to create stuff, aiming for excellence in customer experience. And why am I reiterating that? Because the question is, when should I start omnichannel? I would rephrase that question is, when do you need it? It's not about when do you start it. Why do you need it? What came to your mind saying that, okay, I need to start omnichannel now? If I may think of, if I'm in pre-launch, I could find a million reasons where omnichannel would work. Let's say I want to find investigators for clinical trials. So I could start using data and analytics to see which doctors are interested in certain disease areas, what are they looking for, and then to prompt maybe into are they interested in joining or participating in certain trials, and then linking it to a visit from the clinical research medical advisor or the MSL, and then getting them into our research program and building on that. And then when you start launching, then you bring in the commercial team to use that similar approach and that similar journey, but now with a branded product and the marketing and the messages and the efficacy and everything around that. So it again goes back to, why do I need it, and what is the experience or the journey I want to take the customer on, and not only focusing on the content and the assets that I want to put into play. Let's go back to strategy, experience, asset comes third.
And Carlos, one other pragmatic point I'd add to yours is, are your capabilities ready? Because sometimes people wait and say we have to rush everything at the same time, and that's also a mistake, because you might have groups that are ready to go as well. So also look at your realistic, launch it over time. I like that was a great point. That also might be really crucial, because you might want to just get basic channels going first as you are getting the others ready to go.
John, anything to add, John? Or
yeah, I think it's been summed up perfectly. I think the only other thing I would add is consent and permissions, because if you don't have those in place, especially on the medical side in the pre-license space, if you don't have a permission from someone who's saying to you, come to me and educate me about the data or about the disease, or whatever it is, whatever you're doing from an omni-channel perspective is not really going to work, because you don't have that license to go and speak to someone. And I know I don't want to open a can of worms about medical being reactive versus proactive, but I think it's important to make sure you've got those permissions in place and you build that consent, and you've got clear permissions from an HCP saying, I'd like medical to talk to me about X, Y, and Z, to enable us to then deploy an omni-channel customer journey for those HCPs when it matters, to get that data to them in the appropriate times.
Thanks a lot. I like that part, license to speak, like a MSL James Bond, right? Another very interesting question which we have is, if it's pre-orchestrated, doesn't that by definition mean it's not omnichannel? Because omnichannel means that data is being used to improve, to react to what happens in one channel to another. Who would like to comment on that?
Maybe I'll take that one. So I think it might be in reference to a point that I mentioned. Yeah, it's the omni-channel orchestration. So we plan out experience for the customers, the time and the triggers to which communications are sent to healthcare professionals. The data-driven bit and the orchestration is the sense of the time that the customer has a preference for, through the channel that they maybe have a preference for. And the contents may be personalized based on their own persona or the data that we hold on that particular customer. So it's very much, orchestration of an omni-channel journey or experience. And it needs to be planned. It's not left to chance, is the point I make.
But Sam, to your point, once you have to launch with something, you have to start somewhere. And that's the part where you have to get the data insights capability set up really very quickly, because then that helps you to say, you have to kill some stuff and you might be, hey, we're missing a sweet spot somewhere else. So I think that's the other thing, it's data-driven decision-making. So it gets left to the wayside. People don't think about that, but that's actually, you have to launch with something and be ready to iterate basically with your channels.
Fully agree. Okay, last question from our initial question deck, which is how to align and foresee the future of omnichannel with all the advances happening in tech and in particular generative AI. Just a quick answer on that because we actually just passed 30 minutes and I would like to pick another interesting question from the audience. We can start this time with you, Carlos.
So I think we touched upon most of the points related to that. I think when we're looking into the future, let's not forget about the strategy and the customer experience. And then everything comes in, plug and play. Whatever we need, whatever our budget is, whatever our capabilities are, we can start integrating new technologies. We can start looking at how do we optimize, but let's keep our eyes on the target, which is what is the nice customer experience that we want to provide with the current capabilities that we have and the content that we have.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. John?
I think for me, it's about ensuring that you've got your foundations in place that you can then build on, because if you don't have the foundations and then you start building something, it's going to crumble. So it's important to ensure that you're good, brilliant at the basics, as some people call it, and ensure that those things are in place. Things like a customer journey, for example, or content, or some basic channels in place that you can start playing around with, experimenting with, and then building on. And then obviously metrics to make sure that you can measure the impact that you're having.
Sam?
Yeah, for me, it's don't lose sight of your vision and your objectives, and don't be sidetracked by shiny object syndrome. And I think generative AI presents a lot of those shiny objects.
Fully agree. And Michelle?
Yeah, and we've said what I want to say earlier a little bit, and to build on Sam, is we really have to have real problems we want to solve. And that's not just, some of it's internal, right, to augment maybe our MedInfo service or augment our MSL. But I think the other one that often gets forgotten, and everyone's probably going to agree with this, is what's our actual challenges our customers are facing. We see constantly that what we offer is the opposite of what they actually want. So this is, again, we have to be looking at their challenges. If we're going to go in this space, this is why Amazon does well in multi and omni-channel. This is why we don't, because we want to push what we want out sometimes, and we're not thinking about the needs of the customer in a very concrete way.
Fully agree. Last question from the audience, which I would like to pick, and really we received a ton of different questions. The question is, do you think we should kill the word omnichannel overall and call things out concretely? Even now speaking about it, replacing human channels, it is deviating from the initial definition. And a smiley as well. Who would like to comment on that?
I personally would say I like to use the term of using technology as augmentation of our human capital. It's not particularly sexy, but it really, I think, takes away the stigma of thinking replacement or high-tech stuff that you can't explain. It's how do we make, with the resources we have and the needs of our customers, how do we meet that? And in my opinion, yes, omni-channel as a term is how we get there. But instead of using that terminology, I think it gives someone a different perspective on what you're trying to achieve.
Maybe add to it. I think it depends. In answer to the question, it depends when your organization is ready to do away with the term omni-channel. The term omni-channel describes exactly what we've all been talking about for the past half an hour. And without labeling it, it's very difficult to segment it and keep the focus. So I think it's necessary, but I think just as the transition from multi-channel to omni-channel, whatever will come next, yeah, we're all moving towards it being business as usual, part of day-to-day communications with our customers. But until we get to that point and it's fully embedded, the term's going to stick around.
John, Carlos, anything to add?
I think as much as I'd like to keep the word omni-channel, in alignment with the title of this webinar, I do find that it does cause unnecessary anxiety and can complicate things if you don't understand what it is. And I think it's important to just call it for what it is. It's about improving our customer experience. It's about optimizing that customer experience. And I think if you frame it in that way, I think people can sort of becomes more palatable, I think.
Exactly.
Maybe one thing I will add, Dario, is that if we position omni-channel as the problem, it will remain a confusion. And I see many people posing it as the problem. You know, they put omni-channel and they say, I want to find a solution. How can I implement this omni-channel? How can I integrate it into my strategy? How can I use it? You know, my superiors are asking about my omni-channel strategy. So we are positioning it as the problem. Once we start positioning omni-channel as the solution to a customer's problem, then this becomes really easy. You don't see anyone saying CRM, what do I need to do? CRM, you know, because the CRM is a solution that you're using. And omni-channel should be a solution that you're using to solve a problem and not the problem itself. So for me, this will resolve a lot of the confusions and the terminologies once we start positioning it as a solution.
Thanks a lot. With that final words, I would like to thank everyone, Michelle, Sam, John, Carlos, for taking part in this very interesting webinar. We will publish it on our official YouTube channel as well. I really can't recall when we received such amount of questions from the audience, which just indicates and shows that Omnichannel is very hyped and a very, very timely discussion. So looking forward to the next webinar, and thank you very much for taking part.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.